بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
When we look at Quranic usage, generally speaking, the concept of wilayah is mentioned there. And Allah is the one who has this wilayah. Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu. Allah is the authority or the guardian over the believers. And because of this wilayah, the function of this wilayah, يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ, takes them out of darkness into light. فَاللَّهُ هُوَ الْوَلِي وَهُوَ يُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى. Allah is the wali, Allah is the guardian, the authority, and through this He takes them out of death into life, means their hearts. إِنَّمَا وَلِيُّكُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that originally the authority is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this wilayah is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then Allah gives this authority and wilayah to the Prophet, and after that to Imams. So wilayah in one definition, as it is mentioned in many books, is to love. So we have the wilayah of Rasulullah means to love him. Wilayah of Ahlul Bayt means to love them and to follow them because of the love that we have. When it comes to theological definition, we see that there are two usages for wilayah, and also in fiqh. One is wilayah Tashri'i and the other is wilayah Takwini. Wilayah Tashri'i, or you can say legislative authority, or you can call it also in some examples of it instructional authority, is a kind of authority which is delegated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to some people like the prophets. So the prophet is chosen out of people to have this wilayah. Of course, he had a good character, he was a good person, but anyhow, the authority that he has is a position given to him by Allah. Means that Allah has chosen him to have that authority. So this is called wilayah Tashri'i. The second type of wilayah is the wilayah that is called today wilayah Takwini, and it is concerning a person developing and strengthening the soul in a sense that it gets close to Allah, and by that he can do some extraordinary acts because of the power in the soul. From the 3rd century, the concept of wilayah is mentioned by Urafa. So the concept of wilayah, that the arif, a person who is close to Allah, has a kind of wilayah. And by wilayah they mean this concept. Later on in the 7th century, we see that a person like Abu Sa'id Abul Khair explains it. Khaja Ayatullah Ansari in his book also, when he's talking about the 100 manazil and positions of irfan that they have brought in that book of us about irfan. In different parts he refers to this wilayah. So they used to call it wilayah. And to call it wilayah Takwini, so to use Takwini by the concept of wilayah together, it is something like 200 years old. So the term is new. But anyhow, the concept is there. The concept is that a person's soul is so powerful that can do extraordinary things. We talked about the development of the soul, that a person can reach to such powers. Also in this series of Tawassul and Istighasa, we talked about how you get close to Allah according to hadiths, and Allah will strengthen your soul. This is the outcome of getting close to Allah. And we mentioned the hadiths from the Sunni books about the Prophet healing the sick in different occasions, giving barakah to small food, reviving dead, and the other miraculous acts that even Ibn Taymiyyah said uluf. There are thousands of such things narrated from the Prophet. So we believe that these are because of the soul of the Prophet. Because there is a debate whether when the Prophet is healing, is it just a dua from the Prophet? The Prophet asks Allah to give shifa, or no, the Prophet heals the person himself, of course by the permission from Allah. When he heals the person, means that he has a power to heal the person, but the power is coming from Allah, but the power is in the Prophet. So it's not just merely asking Allah. It's not a request. We went into details about it, and inshallah also we refer to some points. So the concept is there from the very first century, from the time of the Prophet. And later on, when they were writing books, so they used to coin terms for them. So the term Wilayah is coined 3rd century, and Wilayah Takwini recently, in the recent 2 centuries. So as we said, Wilayah Takwini is to have such a power, and so this is different from Wilayah Tashri'i. You see that in Wilayah Tashri'i, it's a right which Allah gives to a person to issue. So Allah gives the authority, and at the time of, for example, occultation of Imam, we see that ulama have this authority. When a faqih is given such authority to rule politically, to financially be in charge of using the public money, so it's a position given to the person by Allah. So this person is given such a position. This is Wilayah Tashri'i. But in Wilayah Takwini is not like this. In Wilayah Takwini, you have to develop yourself. You cannot get Wilayah just to say that now I have this position, so I have this authority. You have to struggle, you have to develop the soul and the self. When Ruh is strong, then it will be powerful to do such a thing. Like a person who goes to, powerlifting, bodybuilding, when they strengthen the body and now they can lift heavy weights that the others cannot do. So it's not a kind of position to give to a person, to a weak person, to say that now you are the best bodybuilder, you are going to lift 300 kilos. He cannot do that. It's a creational reality. You have to go through the exercise, you have to strengthen the muscles, you have to go through practice, then you will have such a power. So this is not just to be given to somebody by an authority. You have to have such capability. Wilayah Takwini is different from the Wilayah Tashri'i in this sense. When we look at the examples of this Wilayah Takwini, we see that there are different aspects to it, or different examples we can find in the text. One is to have a kind of capability to interfere in the ordinary rules of the life, the material life. So they can do things that the others cannot do. For example, he goes into fire, but he's not burnt. This is against the ordinary laws. According to the laws of the nature, when you get into fire, you have to be burnt. But the person who is of such a wilayah, he has such a power, his soul is such powerful to break such a law. Like Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, we mentioned the hadith says that Imam, when he lifts the door of Khaybar, Imam says, Ma qala'atu Baba Khaybar biquwwatin jismaniyya. It wasn't these muscles physically, blood and bone and muscle to lift such a heavy door. But it was a soul which was powerful, which was strengthened by the light to come from Allah. So the light, Imam is referring to as light. This light which strengthens the soul of Amirul Mu'mineen to lift such a door. This is a kind of wilayah that he has, so he can interfere in the rules of the nature. Another point or another form of such wilayah is informing about the things that people don't know, that you can call it ghayb, ilmul ghayb. As Isa alayhi salam mentioned in Qur'an, that I tell you what you have kept, what you have hidden in your houses, means that I know the secrets that you have. So ordinary people cannot know these things. This is ilmul ghayb. Of course, Ilmul ghayb is for Allah, but Allah can give to His servants. We have discussed these things. I don't want to get into them to take time. And we have lots of such stories in the life of the Prophet and also in Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, that they knew things that people didn't know. Another one that can be from this is to be Shaheed, means to be witness upon people. To be witness upon and over people in what they do. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah At-Tawbah, verse 105, وَقُلْ اعْمَلُوا O Allah, O Rasul, tell them, do whatever you do, فَسَيَّرَ اللَّهُ أَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ Allah will see your act, the Prophet will see your act, and mu'minun, the believers, will see your act. We have many hadiths which are sahih. We, in this series of Tawassul and Istighasa, we mentioned those hadiths, sahih hadiths in this regard, that these mu'minun are a'imma alayhimus salam, and they see the Prophet and a'imma, they see our acts in this, while the Prophet and Imam is in this life or is not in this life. So they have this capability of seeing our acts, and they are shahid, they are witness upon us. And this is not about the hereafter. In the hereafter is another issue. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقُلْ اعْمَلُوا فَسَيَّرَ اللَّهُ عَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Some people may say, sin is for future. So this future is the day of judgment. While it is not always the same. Usually for far distance, they use sofa. Sin sometimes might be a very near future. That's why after that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَسَتُرَدُّونَ إِلَىٰ عَالِمِ الْغَيْبِ وَالشَّهَادَةِ. وَسَتُرَدُّونَ, this is referring to the Day of Judgment. فَسَيَّرَ اللَّهُ أَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Allah and the Rasul and the believers will see your act. Then after that, وَسَتُرَدُّونَ إِلَىٰ عَالِمِ الْغَيْبِ وَالشَّهَادَةِ. And later you will turn to Allah who knows the ghayb. So this is the second part. When the second part is referring to Qiyamah, the first part shouldn't be about Qiyamah. It's in this dunya. This is an indication. The context shows that this sayyara is not for Qiyamah, because after that said, and later, وَسَتُرَدُّونَ إِلَىٰ عَالِمِ الْغَيْبِ وَالشَّهَادَةِ. This is about Qiyamah. So the first part is before that, means before Qiyamah. And this tafsir is supported by many hadiths sahih hadiths that we mentioned. Another the aspect of this Wilayah Takwini that we can find is to have control over your khiyaal, over your imagination. We all have this faculty of khiyaal, and we always like to have control over it. We all have such a dream, not to have a wandering, illusion and imagination and khiyaal that it goes from here to there. To have it focused on something. Like for example in ibadah, in worship, when you're performing salat, we like to have concentration in salat. But it's difficult, we cannot do that. So it gets out of control. So a person who strengthens himself in the way of getting close to Allah and in the way of perfection, then one of the powers that this wilayah creates in them is that they can have control of their khiyaal. We have heard this hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam that when they wanted to take out the arrow from his leg, they said it was painful, so they said do it while he's performing salat, because at that time all the attention is to Allah, and then he will not pay attention to the pain. He will not actually understand. He will not feel the pain. Means that he has a kind of attention to Allah, that he will be disconnected from the pain of the body. We have such thing also narrated from some of our ulama, like late Ayatullah Khansari. He had a fatwa that when a mujtahid is unconscious, at that moment the a'mal and the acts of his muqallideen, his followers, is batil. because the faculty of ijtihad is gone at that moment. So he had to do a surgery, and to do the surgery, they said that we have to inject you, the medicine, then you will be unconscious. And he didn't accept. He said that when you wanted to do surgery, just let me know, and then I will tell you. When the moment that they wanted to start, the doctor said, do it. If we are going to do it, then he said, after I start Quranic, then you can do the surgery. He started Surah Yasin. He recited Surah Yasin. They cut the stomach. They did the surgery, and he didn't notice. He was a person that Imam Khomeini, rahmatullah alayhi, he used to say that we have to talk about the isma of Agha Khansari, not about his idala and justice. So he's beyond idala. He was such a figure and personality. So I mean, this is a kind of wilayah that you will have such a concentration over your khiyaal and imagination, and this is one of the fruits of such a wilayah. Another aspect of wilayah that we see in the life of Urafa and Awliya frequently has been mentioned in different books is Takhliyatul Jasd. We have a soul and body, and this soul and body are connected to each other. So our soul needs the body in order to develop itself. So there is a kind of mutual impact of the body on the soul. The haram that you eat affects your soul. When you look at something haram, it hurts your soul. When you hear something which is haram, it damages the soul. So the body is the gates of soul towards action and practice. So our body influences our soul, and also our soul influences the body. For example, when your soul is in a kind of pain, your body feels it. When you are embarrassed, your face goes faints. When you are angry, your face goes red. Means that when the soul is in a kind of change, it affects the body. So there is a kind of mutual relation between soul and the body. And when awliyaullah, they get strong, they reach to a level that the soul is such strong that sometimes it doesn't need the body. So the soul can farewell the body and get out of the body and be free. So the body falls like a dead corpse, and the soul can be free without the limitations of the body, and then it can return back to the body. There are people that for some seconds in their life they have experienced such a thing, but awliyaullah, they have the capability to do it the moment that they decide. And the other one is to interfere in the issues of the world, in the worldly issues. So this is what we call it mu'jiza or karama, to be miracle or to be extraordinary act that the person does by the permission to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like healing the sick, like increasing the food, like making the animal to speak, and all those stories that we mentioned. These are the capabilities of the person who is strong in the soul. So briefly, this is the Wilayah Takwini that we have. The concept is in Qur'an, the concept is in hadiths. I said terminology doesn't matter. Terminology might be, the term Wilayah Takwini might be coined later, but it's not going to change the truth and the concept which is there in Qur'an and the hadith. So it is, we believe that awliyaullah, imams, the prophet, they had this wilayah, and it was the result of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد